Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, January the 18th, 2017. This is show number 1122. I'm your host, Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here live on the Wednesday evening or in the archive as you so choose how to listen to this particular podcast. As always, we thank you guys very much for joining us. Send us emails, as always, to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. On tonight's show, as always, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's in Los Angeles tonight, undoubtedly at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. He's in a bar somewhere. He's at NAM, the National Association of Music Marketing. I think that's what it is. But he's down there for that big convention as he goes every year. We're talking about that. We'll also talk about the Consumer Reports report. They walked back their not recommended rating on Apple's latest MacBook Pros. And we'll talk to Jim about how it happened, why it happened, and maybe why it shouldn't have happened. It's one of those things that it's maybe a little bit inside baseball, but we'll talk to Jim about it and whose fault it was and whether the solution is the appropriate one given the situation. We're also going to talk about locking your iPhone. You may have heard there's a class action lawsuit against Apple for not providing users with the ability, either automatically or manually, to lock their iPhone when they are driving a vehicle. Should they have to do that? As Rob Griffith said on Twitter, are we going to start blaming the car companies for everything? Are we going to blame phone companies for texting in general? Are we going to blame Exxon for making gas? Where does this stop? We'll talk about that later on in the show. In our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about photography classes. I got some more questions from folks about the classes I offered last year. I'm going to start re-offering them again this year. We'll talk about how you can sign up for one of the classes. And if you're a subscriber, we have a special deal for you if you subscribe to Your Mac Life. We're also going to talk about that the Greek iPhone ad showing off Portrait Plus. That was really neat that Apple did it with in Greek with English subtitles. But a sharp-eyed photographer noticed they cheated a little bit, and they cheated using one of these things. And I'll explain to you what one of these things is and why you should carry it around with you. It's a little tiny thing, but you should have it in your pocket with your camera gear. It's one of those things that you can use in a bunch of different situations. So we'll talk about that and much more later on in the show. I can't remember if we talked about this on last week's show, but if we did, I got to say it again because it's the funniest thing in the world. Dom Harrison, the single most brilliant thing I've ever read, he said, I don't know who wrote this, but when I worked at BMP, the head of television commuted in from Brighton every day. He started reading The Exorcist on the train. He said he thought it was the most evil book he'd ever read. In fact, he said it was so evil, he couldn't even finish it. So, at the weekend, he went to the end of the Brighton Pier and threw it as far as he could. So I went to the bookshop. I bought another copy. I ran it under the tap. I left it in his desk for him to find. That's evil. That's just utterly and completely, brilliantly evil. Can you imagine? You think this book is evil and you throw it away and it shows back up in your desk on Monday morning? Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's just utterly hilarious that somebody would do that. And I'm not a big fan of practical jokes. I don't like embarrassing or humiliating people, but that's a practical joke that just should utterly be done often. Oh, by the way, we've been playing around with Telegram for the past 6 months, and now I'm not moved over, but I'm also going to be playing around with another app called Slack. A lot of you probably use it for your businesses and for remote telecommuting and communicating with people. And so for you folks in the IRC chat room, in just a moment, Sherry, there we go, look at her, has posted the slack.com link to Your Mac Life. It's yourmaclife.slack.com. Now you're going to have to sign up for or sign into Slack, and then you'll be able to do that. It's just another chat room that'll be open 24/7. Just like the Telegram room. If you like Telegram, stay with Telegram. If you want something different, try Slack with me. Just testing out to see what works and what doesn't work, and how I can use it. It's not going to replace IRC, but if folks in the IRC chat room want to jump into the Slack room, they can do that too. There'll be conversations going on, hopefully, in both rooms. But IRC is still king, according to you guys. So check that out if you would like. The other thing I wanted to, I was playing around with here it is, that 360-degree camera, the Ricoh Theta S camera. And it's a really interesting, cool piece of kit, as my British friends would say. It is, it has the ability to do a 360-degree photograph. And this is really neat because this is I mounted it on the front of my motorcycle, on the windshield, the outside of the motorcycle, and went out for a ride this past Sunday. It was quite cold, about 2 degrees Celsius, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Wasn't windy almost again. Most of the snow and ice were off the roads. You can see in the picture that there was all kinds of snow on the sides of the roads. We'd gotten quite a bit of snow here in the last month or so. I haven't been able to go riding for, a month and a half now. So it was mandatory that I get out there and do some riding. And I mounted a couple other, I was testing out some other things on the bike, mounting some smaller cameras. I mounted this little tiny GoPro type camera to it, but it bounced too much. I mounted my Olympus Tough camera, but it bounced too much. So I had to find a way to do that. I'm trying to find a way to do video on the bike too. So that is what I was doing on the weekend. And the camera, the 360 stuff is really kind of interesting. I don't know if it's useful enough. It's got some neat little features to it. I can zoom out to show you guys a whole different view of it. I can zoom in. The biggest downside for me is the difficulty in getting the Slack stuff off the camera, off the iPhone app, and on the web. Right now, I can only do it, I can't seem to embed it into my website. I can only show it to you off the Theta website, the Theta 360 website itself, which is a bit annoying. But it's kind of a neat little thing to play around with. And it doesn't work in all situations. I've noticed this. When I tried getting, I went off to a highway overpass here a few weeks ago, and I tried getting I thought it'd be really neat to get a big wide shot of all the mountains around me, and it didn't come out right. These shots, the camera took a bunch of them, and most of them were too dark. It's very difficult on the Theta Cam to adjust the settings on it. This one was shot in auto mode, and it came out okay. It was one of the best of the 10 or so that were taken. It's kind of nice. It's interesting. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be something I'm going to continue to do much of, but right now it's a fun little toy. And speaking of toys, I've started to get more into Instagram shots too. For those of you who are Instagrammers, I linked my Instagram is starting_point_photography. If you want to check out some of the shots I posted up on Instagram, leave some comments and that kind of stuff. If you want to see what I've been posting to Instagram as opposed to Flickr or Twitter or that kind of stuff. Just a bunch of shots taken in the general area of where I live, this beautiful, beautiful part of the country of where I live. What else do I got before we head off to see Jim? Hang on, let me just close that and close that. What's this one? No, not that one. There was something else. Another Twitter thing I wanted to show. Oh, I've been on this kick for a while now. There's this Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, as it's constituted now, is going to be a disaster. Security-wise, it's already a disaster. Almost every webcam out there is easily hackable. almost every Internet of Things kind of device has got gaping security holes. But for me, one of the big issues is the fact that a lot of this stuff doesn't work unless it's connected to the internet. We talked late last year, about the pet feeder. Now, you don't need an internet-connected frickin' pet feeder. But this particular pet feeder, when the internet was down, wouldn't feed your pets. That's just insane. But this one was funny. This was apparently this is an internet-connected refrigerator, and she just wanted some water, but her fridge was upgrading, so she couldn't get any water out of the fridge. It's just like the dumbest thing, that you can't get water out of your refrigerator until Windows updates. It's just so funny that, in a sad way, that we have these things that are connected to the internet that you don't need your fridge connected to the frickin' internet. Okay? There's just no reason for it. But then when it is connected to the internet, the fact that it won't work when it's doing internet stuff is, mosquito, buying a major appliance that run Windows. Oh, God. And then there's a story on Ricoh. Note the Tesla owners, don't forget your car keys. So apparently, I don't know if it's all models of Tesla, but there's certain models of Tesla where you don't have to bring your car keys with you. Because you have the Tesla app and it's connected to your car, you can just leave the house and go driving in your Tesla. That's great. That's fantastic. Until the time comes when you drive out of cell phone range and your phone can't communicate to the folks at Tesla to start your car. This poor schmuck was 2 hours outside of the cell phone zone, gets out of his car, turns his car off, goes out wandering in the woods or whatever, comes back, and his car won't start because he didn't have the keys. His poor wife had to walk for 2 hours to get into cell phone range. So they could have a friend come get her, drive her home to get the frickin' car keys, to come back out there to start the car. It's just stupid. Wayne, they didn't make it Bluetooth? The heck? Exactly. The car has to communicate through the cell carrier, through the cell wire plan, cell network, in order to start your car. It's utterly ridiculous. I'm seeing folks in the RC chat room saying that you can share Ricoh on Google Street View. Cool. And Photosynth also lets you share. All right, cool. Thanks, Evis. Appreciate that. Later on the show, we're going to talk about taking photo classes. I'm going to be offering again this year live on-demand photo classes. We're also going to talk about this little device, this little thing here that can save some of your photos, and how Apple used it, probably, in their Greek iPhone 7 portrait ad. But up next, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's down in Los Angeles getting ready for the NAMM show, talking about that and a bunch of other things. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me. As always, if you want to send us emails, you can send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Joined now in our phone room by our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am good. You were down there. You're doing that on purpose, aren't you?
No?
You were down there in Los Angeles at the NAMM show.
Yeah.
This is your favorite show, isn't it? You love going to NAMM.
I love going to NAMM. But you know what pisses me off this time?
What's that?
I get all the way down here, with my shopping cart and my empties and everything. And I turn around and there's Bob.
Oh, God, are you kidding me?
He came too.
How did he find his way down there?
I don't know, but he beat me here too.
How do the homeless have GPS?
I don't know.
I understand that. So for those folks who aren't familiar with it, what is NAMM?
NAMM is a trade show for music companies.
Music companies?
Hmm.
What do you mean by music companies?
Well, it's the companies that make the products that engineers and musicians use
okay.
to make music.
Yeah.
So, there's guitar companies, there's drum companies, there's trumpets, there's every instrument you could possibly imagine, plus all of the software.
Okay.
So, Avid is here, with Pro Tools, and, every software maker is here showing what's new. Every company that you can imagine is here. It's huge.
So it's basically the same idea as CES, but for music.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But most of the products here are actually real. That's
it's a big it's a big selling point, isn't it?
So, there's that. Yes, very, very great place to be if you're a producer or a musician.
Yep.
This is it. So,
Now,
through the week, there's about 100,000 people come in for the show.
It's not a consumer show either, is it? It's a professional show.
Yeah. So it's not a place where you can go buy a $10 ticket on a Saturday and go.
Yeah.
No, this is for the industry. So when you're planning, if you have a studio, or even if you're a small musician and you need to build something,
Yeah.
This is the place where you would go to find out all the new stuff.
Is there anything in particular you're looking for, or looking at this show this year?
I'm just starting to get a glimpse of the new things that are coming out, so I'll know more, tomorrow and Friday. The show actually opens tomorrow.
So it's not like CES where there's a shitload of press releases that come out ahead of time that you can plan for stuff, is it?
No, not really. I mean, my focus is more on the software and the interfaces for, Mac related stuff.
Yep.
To write about. So I get those, and I have received some of those already, the stuff that's being announced tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when I really settle in and get all that stuff done, then I go look at what interests me, which is guitars, and amps. So I'll go buy the Gibson booth, or I'll go buy Fender, and see all the new stuff that's there. And that's where the fun is.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cool bands and performances too, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's and the performances and everything are everything from rock acts to country and violin, and there's everything here. Yeah. Everything. I mean, this is really not about one genre of music. This is about the entire industry. So you can find anything here.
I think that's the issue with the inauguration, Trump's inauguration. All the bands are at NAMM. They can't play at the inauguration, right?
Well, there are a lot of bands here because no, listen, you actually bring up probably not a great point, but there are a lot of bands here because, and this is interesting, because the companies endorse the bands, throughout the year, give them free gear and everything to use, and they play on stage. Well, at NAMM, it's payback time.
That's right.
It really is, because that's when they want all of those people to come show up at their booth, and sign autographs and stuff for the people that are here. So maybe Trump can find a cover band somewhere, another one.
Good luck for him.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Last week it was announced that I guess we could describe it this way, that Apple and Consumer Reports had come to a détente together with regards to their Consumer Reports recommendation of the MacBook Pro. First of all, does that recommendation really carry a lot of weight, either in your opinion or in fact?
Well, we're going to go back to the exact same thing that we did before, and we're going to talk about the consumer.
No.
It's not, for me, Consumer Reports can kiss my ass. I don't give them any thought, any weight, nothing.
Yep.
But for the average consumer, I think they do.
No.
And that's where the big difference comes. I mean, you and I and the people that listen to this show can say, no, it doesn't mean anything. But I think that's very short-sighted, because it does mean something to a lot of people. I mean, if you ask a lot of people, where do you research something, they may say, CNET reviews or, but a lot of them would probably say Consumer Reports, because that's the name that they know. So yeah, it does mean something, especially when they get it wrong.
Yeah.
So
MacMan says, Consumer Reports is worthless for electronics reviews. And I wrote back to him, that being the case, wouldn't they be useless for other reviews as well? I find this really interesting, and I'm the same way. I have no problem admitting it. I completely agree, especially when it comes to Apple, especially when it comes to Mac stuff. Consumer reviews has historically been terrible. They've just been stupid when it comes to reviewing Apple's products. But when it comes to other things like cars or dishwashers, we trust them. Why do we trust them in one area but not the other?
Maybe they're better at doing dishwashers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just I don't know what it is, but I think MacMan is right. I don't know what it is about Consumer Reports and technology that, maybe nobody else knows about dishwashers, so they can't call Consumer Reports out.
True. Yeah, fair point.
Like we can with electronics. I mean, anything to do with electronics, whether it's headphones or computers or phones or what, there's people out there that tear these things apart bit by bit, and they know everything about them and can call Consumer Reports out on their bullshit.
Yep.
Well, I mean, what kind of a job would that be for a dishwasher?
Yeah, okay.
There's probably dishwasher installers, repairmen, builders who can say the same thing.
Yep.
But it's just not as popular as smartphones.
Our friend Glenn Fleischman over at Tidbits wrote in an article, the apparent reason for Sierra's test result inconsistency was revealed on January 11th. After Apple reviewed the test methodology provided by CR, Apple discovered a bug that affected a setting available only after enabling developer options in Safari. What happened was Consumer Reports, for good and bad reasons, made a change that the average consumer would not have done. Right. And therefore got these really weird test results. Now, I get that. I get the reason why Consumer Reports did it. I don't agree with why they did it, but that's their methodology. The problem I have with this is you've reviewed products. I've reviewed products. Maybe some folks in our audience have reviewed products. When you see something that's wildly inconsistent or something that just doesn't jibe with the way you expect the thing to work, you don't then go ahead and publish your article anyway. you at least talk to the company and go, hey, this is kind of weird. Why is it doing this? Oh, it's supposed to. Okay, fine. Or, no, it's not supposed to. Let us fix that before you publish the review. That's the problem I have with Consumer Reports. They get these really weird numbers, and instead of saying to Apple, hey, guys, we found these really weird numbers in a product that we've recommended consistently over the past 5 years as the best product out there, why would they then turn around and slam them?
Because they used it as an opportunity.
Possibly, yeah.
That's it. They used it as an opportunity to not recommend it. But, when they came back and said that, they now recommended it, they did that and blamed Apple and the bug for the problem.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off just as much as the fact that they went ahead and published in the first place. And just to be clear, as a reviewer, when you go to a company and say, which I have done too, and say, look, this is really weird, and if the company says, there's a bug and we found it and it'll be fixed, if you don't have time to test out the new one, you publish what you found with the caveat that you contacted the company and they're aware of the problem and they're fixing it. That's just the way it is. That's what you do, not to give the company a chance to come back and fix things, but to be able to be thorough in your review, to be able to say, what?
Is somebody robbing a car behind you? Is that
yes,
Bob?
They are, actually. Bob's trying to break into a car and sleep in the back.
Oh, my God. How come this shit happens to me when I interview you? When you get interviewed by anybody else, this shit doesn't happen. It's just me.
I can see the car across the parking lot. There's nobody even around it. God almighty. I'm glad I don't have a car. I know it's not mine. So.
Exactly. So basically, will this help or hurt Consumer Reports and or Apple? Is the bottom line of this just being a tempest in a teapot and this will not affect sales? Or, as Glenn seems to think, that it will affect sales and therefore it's a bigger issue than what we might think?
Well, I don't think it's going to affect sales. I do think it hurts the reputation of Consumer Reports. But, sales of the MacBook Pro, according to Schiller, the online sales were stronger than any other.
Yeah.
So you have to think that, it's just going to continue to be good. I don't think that the Consumer Reports thing will do anything to hurt that.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's another one of those issues where if you're going to buy, I don't think there's many people that are sitting there thinking, I'm either going to buy a MacBook Pro or I'm going to buy an HP or, a Windows machine. I don't think that there's a lot of folks out there who are doing that. If you want to buy a MacBook Pro, this may have made you wait a while to buy one, but I don't think this would make you think, well, screw that, I'm going to buy a Windows machine.
Right.
I don't think it's going to affect sales in that way. It may have pushed back some sales. People may not be buying them immediately. They may wait for this to shake out. But I think over the long run, I don't think it's going to do a whole lot of damage to Apple. It's interesting, though, that you think this will hurt Consumer Reports more than it would Apple. I think the perception.
I think Consumer Reports came off looking like amateurs.
Yeah, but the general public doesn't remember this stuff. The next time Consumer Reports does a story, people will not remember this. The average consumer, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I think they're idiots.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. We've been having a problem with them since the original iMac came out, and they slammed the original iMac for not having a floppy drive. That was the beginning of the end for me when it came to Consumer Reports and their ability to objectively review Apple's product. I don't know about anybody else's products, but certainly Apple's products. They do a shitty job of it.
Yeah, they do.
This is a class action lawsuit demanding Apple add a lockout system to the iPhone to prevent texting while driving. This is a new class action lawsuit filed in California. Wants to force Apple to add features to the iPhone that will help prevent drivers from texting while behind the wheel, while also alleging
exactly
Apple
how is that going to happen?
Well, Apple has patented the ability.
No, how are they going to do just the driver?
There's a good question. That's an excellent question. I don't think there's any system available that can pinpoint where you were sitting in the car, whether you're sitting in the left-hand side or the right-hand side. The only thing that you could possibly do is have the phone plugged in to the far right-hand side of the vehicle with a little tiny short cable. You know what I mean? That the iPhone wouldn't work at all if its accelerometer knew that it was moving unless it was plugged in to the far side of the car. The logistics of this just aren't possible.
The thought that this should be done. Here's my problem. People are stupid. And I see it all the time. People driving along and texting.
Oh God, yeah.
And I want to swerve.
Yep.
You know, I want to hold up a sign. I want to make a sign, put it in the car, and then when I see it, just hold it up to the window and say, "Get off your phone, you fucking idiot."
Yep.
You know, I mean, people are stupid. People will find a way around anything.
Yeah.
Because that text has to go right now. And it's awful. It is awful. So it's not Apple's responsibility, I don't think, or Samsung or Motorola or Google or anybody else in the industry to protect people from their own stupidity. It's not their responsibility. I understand that there are people that have been hurt and killed in accidents, and I feel bad.
Yep.
And they weren't the ones doing it. But, you know, is there any kind of method from the car makers to say if you've been drinking alcohol, the car won't start?
Yeah. Yeah, you can have cars that are equipped with a breathalyzer in the steering wheel.
It's mandatory and standard in every vehicle.
No, not at all. But you can have that.
That's what they want to do with Apple.
Yeah, exactly. Another solution is that the car won't work unless both of your hands are on the wheel in the 10 and 2 position. So there are sensors in the steering wheel that don't allow the car to go forward unless your hands are in that position.
And what happens when you're 60 miles an hour on the highway and you take your hand off? Does it just jolt to a stop?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. I get that these families and are upset, but it's not the company's responsibility to ensure that people are not stupid.
That's right. That's right.
And texting and driving is stupid. So I don't think it has any merit.
The suit identifies Julio Ceja of Costa Mesa, California, as the plaintiff who was involved in a car accident where his vehicle was hit from behind by another driver who was reportedly distracted by using her iPhone. As a motorcyclist, this terrifies me. This is one of the most terrifying things that happens to me. Whenever I come up to a stoplight or a stop sign, the first thing I do is look behind me to make sure the asshat behind me is paying attention. And I've had a couple of instances where I've heard the wheels of the car squeal behind me because the person looked up from their phone, and bikes are hard enough to see anyway, thought they had more room and stopped just barely. And I've heard of dozens of motorcyclists who've been squashed, bumped, hit, hurt because the person behind them wasn't paying attention. It's got nothing to do with the phone, though. That person who was driving is an idiot.
Right.
They were going to hurt someone some way.
That's what it comes down to.
I don't think you can mandate lack of stupid.
So how about this? A friend of mine in San Francisco was on the freeway And, you know, traffic on the freeway in San Francisco is busy. All of a sudden you just come to a stop.
Yep.
And, you know, the woman was in a Volkswagen Bug. She hit a Tahoe truck, and the Tahoe went into my friend's car.
Yeah.
So she was moving. If she can move a Tahoe with a Volkswagen Bug, she was moving.
Yep.
Didn't see her. She was looking at her phone, and got out, had her insurance card and everything already,
yep.
and said, "Here you go. Here's my information." It's happened before.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was no big deal to her.
Yep.
It was a young. She was in her early 20s. It was no big deal to her. She wrecked her car. She could have killed somebody.
Oh yeah.
And she just hopped out and gave him the insurance card. Here you go.
Monty says in the chat room that my car would never move because I haven't driven at 10 and 2 since my driver's test when I turned 15.
Yeah, I'm with you, Monty.
Neither have I.
I'm with you. My car would never move.
Exactly.
Apparently, Bob got away with that car.
Yeah, good for him.
Good.
At least he's got a place to sleep tonight. Hopefully you do too. The the idea of the manufacturer being responsible for stuff, even though they have a patent for it, is another part of this that's just utterly ridiculous. Just because they patent something doesn't mean it's a good idea. Doesn't mean that they can put it into the products. Maybe it's too expensive.
Or that they have to.
Or that they have to. Exactly. Yeah. Let someone else deal with this problem. I don't think this is a problem. And again, as you said, I feel bad for the folks whose lives have been affected by this kind of thing. But it's not the fault of Apple or Google or Samsung or anyone else. It's the fault of the idiot behind the wheel.
And you know what I used to say is that it's the fault of the parents for not teaching their kids not to text and drive. But I see a lot of parents doing it. So I don't know where the fault lies, but it's not with the company.
Yeah, it's not with the manufacturer of the device. Yes, we can make cars safer. Then I'm all for that, seatbelt and airbags and that kind of stuff. But as you've said many times, there's a point where you have to lay the responsibility on the idiot behind the wheel. That's one of the problems I have with a lot of these things that we're adding to the inside of a car that make them even more distracting. Not just cell phones, but one of the worst things I've seen is the Tesla with the giant screen that it has for everything, for navigation and radio and air conditioning. You have to look at that screen in order to change anything. Well, that's a bad thing. Anytime you're taking your eyes off the road, it's a bad thing. Same with rear view cameras, cameras that pop up out of your trunk of your car so you can back up. Just be a better driver.
Yeah. Yep. I have no issue with safety features on cars. You know, they made them a lot safer in the last 20 years or so, and that's all good. But for God's sakes, teach the people how to drive.
MacMan says backup cameras are actually useful. Yeah, I agree they're useful, but what's even more useful is becoming a good driver. We managed to get through our entire lives up until this point without having backup cameras. I find they make people lazy.
Well, you still have to look both ways. You still have to, I was always taught that when you're going to change lanes, you give a glance behind you in the direction you're going to make sure there's not a car in your blind spot. Now, people, they turn on their signal light and turn,
Wayne says in the IRZ chat room, they're supposed to complement, not replace. But we know they're going to replace. That's just the way human beings are. And again, my bias is the fact that being a motorcyclist, I don't want anything that distracts you in your 2-ton vehicle that can possibly squash me. Anything. I mean, if believe me, if I thought there was a way to stop phones from working when they're in a car that worked, I'd be on the front lines fighting for that. Because as a motorcyclist, we see it even more so than you guys in the cars do, of these people who aren't paying attention. They're not looking through the windshield. They're looking any place else but the windshield for long periods of time, too. That is utterly terrifying to those of us who ride motorcycles.
Yep.
Sherry says, my dad was at the hospital for blood work and his car was hit in the parking lot. The woman came in and told him my backup camera beeper didn't work.
Oh my God.
She just didn't look. So the thing didn't work, so she just kept going.
Wow.
This goes hand in hand with the thing we were talking about earlier before you came on. Did you hear the story about the Tesla owner finding the limits of his smartphone keyless entry system? That he left his key at home to his Tesla because he didn't need it because he's got his iPhone. He goes out for a drive in the desert, but when he loses cell phone coverage, his car won't start.
Well, then you're an idiot.
Oh, God.
Seriously. I don't even know what to say.
We are moving towards that time of the movie WALL-E. We're all just fat blobs sitting in floating chairs. That's what all this stuff is doing for us. It's making us. It's going to make us mosquito idiocracy. It's making us stupider. It's making us lazier. It's making us less willing to do things for ourselves and want to be spoon-fed everything.
Yeah.
It's
awful.
It's awful. CES was last week. You didn't go to CES, but
No.
The big trend at CES was, I think, very interesting, and even more so than other 3D TV, which, by the way, is officially dead. 4K TV, 8K TV, UHD, all that TV stuff. Drones were huge. Connected cars were huge. The biggest thing at CES, though, was Alexa. Was Amazon's Echo and Alexa being in almost every single device that it was capable of being in. Do you think that Amazon has taken the lead and will continue to own the lead when it comes to this sort of voice assistant?
Well, they've certainly taken the lead.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, whatever Amazon did to get all these companies on board was brilliant.
We know what they did.
They just opened it for them.
Exactly. Then they made the SDK so easy to use. And by the way, folks, you may not realize this, Amazon's rules for devices that can use Alexa are very, very low. The bar is very, very low. You don't need, I think the Amazon Echo has got 7 or 8 microphones. You only need 1 microphone if you're using Alexa's SDK. So they've really lowered the barrier to entry to other companies, which is why we saw so many. Now, those things aren't going to work as well as the Amazon Echo with its, beam projection and 8 microphones and that kind of stuff. But you don't know that till after you buy it.
Right. And that's not Amazon's problem.
I think it is. I think it's going to be Amazon's product.
From the consumer standpoint, you're going to say, oh, my fridge doesn't work.
No, you're going to say Alexa doesn't work.
No, I don't think you will. Consumers, again, now.
Yep. But don't you think that this is something that Apple needs to get? They're working on it now. We know Apple's working on something. There's something in their skunk works that is similar to the Echo, something that's completely different. But I believe that AirPods are Apple's version of the Echo. Because the Echo doesn't work anywhere outside your house. AirPods work everywhere that you are.
Well, and that's what I said before, though, that, Siri seems to be the assistant you take with you, and Amazon Alexa is the one that's going to control your house, because that's the way it seems right now.
Do you think that will coexist happily, or does one have to win in order for the other to lose?
Well, I mean, I go back to, for me, I want more out of a home assistant than what I currently see. So I don't know that what they're doing is enough for me. So, you know.
Yeah.
And then again, Amazon or Siri is more of a productivity assistant instead of just, you know, asking it questions.
Yeah.
I get better answers from Google sometimes on general questions than what I do from Siri.
Yes.
So, you know, there's that.
I know Apple knows, but I'd love to know how many people have used Siri because they saw the commercials or they read something about it on the Loop or whatever it was. Siri didn't work the way they expected it to, and then they never used it again.
Yeah.
I got to believe I would say that's the majority of people. I don't think the majority of iPhone users are using Siri on even a weekly basis, let alone daily or hourly. I think most of us have gotten frustrated with Siri. I know I have, and just don't use her. You and I have talked about this many times before. I use Siri for a timer. I no longer use Siri to say, hey, Siri, what time's the basketball game on? Because she doesn't frickin' know.
Yeah.
Here, let me look that up on the web. Yeah. No, I can do that, Siri.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the key is, and this is something that's going to happen, it depends on how fast it happens and how much Amazon has their hooks and other things. I believe the combination of AirPods, Siri, and HomeKit by this Christmas will coalesce, and we will see something very similar to an Amazon Echo type device with AirPod and Siri integration. Now, that doesn't mean you have to buy AirPods. Apple wouldn't do that. But I think that things will work better if you have that combination of AirPods, the iPhone, maybe even the Apple Watch, and some sort of home speaker.
Well, it might do well to identify who's speaking to you. You know, or who's in the room, or, you know, however you want that to go.
But the other thing I have a personal issue with is, and the story just came out last week before, about the lawsuit. The police are trying to get the records from an Amazon Echo because of a crime was committed, and they want to know what Echo heard, which is a little bit bothersome.
That's frightening.
It's not that Amazon is listening. The Echo is listening. She has to listen in order to be able to hear her code word and commands. But the fact that Amazon might be collecting and collating and storing that information.
And whatever it heard. Jeez.
We heard the story before Christmas, I think, last year, that the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas is going to equip every single one of its rooms with an Amazon Echo. That's the first thing I'm turning off.
That makes sense because that's blackmail stuff.
Exactly. When I go into a hotel room nowadays, the first thing I do is I go to the alarm clock and I make sure the frickin' thing is turned off. Yeah. Now, if I go to the Wynn Hotel, which, by the way, I'm never going to stay at a Wynn Hotel, I'm going to unplug the Amazon Echo.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's the last thing I want is me being drunk in Las Vegas and having a frickin' Echo being able to communicate anything or listen in any way, shape, or form. No, it's just a bad idea. Folks, we've been talking
all the way around.
We've been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim is down in Los Angeles, Anaheim, California, to be exact, at the NAMM show. We'll look for his reports from NAMM coming up all the rest of this week on loopinsight.com. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks a lot, Shawn.
Talk to you later, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
I promised to do this last week, but there was some sort of unsurprising glitch. But I want to make sure I get this done now. This is from our friend Marcus Mendez. Marcus is in, I believe, Sao Paulo. All right, listen to this, folks. This is from Marcus. Hang on, I'm turn the volume up. Oh, for crying out loud.
YML, Happy New Year from Marcus from Brazil.
Gotta push the buttons in the right direction, right time, dummy. Try again.
Hey Shawn, hey folks from YML, Happy New Year from Marcus from Brazil. I decided to take a walk here on the last day of the year and it started raining. Not sure if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but gotta close those rings. So anyways, Happy New Year to all of you. Hope 2017 is better than 2016. It's not a very high bar, is it? Cheers.
Thanks very much to Marco for that New Year's Eve greeting. I know New Year's Day greeting. It was New Year's Eve? New Year's Eve greeting. He was out walking and he did that video for us. So thanks very much for that, Marco. I appreciate that. Down there in Brazil, I don't know what I was expecting him to look like, but he's a good-looking guy. Lives in Brazil and is a good-looking guy. I don't like him. I just decided I'm not a fan anymore. This story happened last week. Is Apple working on augmented reality glasses? Apparently, someone heard Robert Scoble fart in their general direction and decided that. So Scoble's at CES, and he goes into the booth of where was it? The Carl Zeiss booth. Scoble explained what happened in a Facebook post. He was exploring the AR section of the show floor when he came upon the Carl Zeiss booth. After noticing the booth didn't have any AR technology on display, Scoble joked and then got confirmation from an employee that the reason was that the tech wasn't on display was because of a partnership with Apple. Okay. And as usual, the rumor mill went nuts over this. They just lost their minds over this story. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, Robert Scoble is a guy who's been around for a very, very long time. Depending on your point of view of Scoble, your opinion of Scoble, he's either right or he's wrong. I think he's wrong, if only because of the description of the interaction. He talked to an employee in the booth at CES. Now, having gone to CES 5-6 times, having gone to 15, 20 Macworld Expos, having gone to many, many trade shows, I know for a stone cold fact, 95% of the people who are in the booth don't know shit. Okay? If they knew something, they wouldn't be in a booth at CES. If you're important enough to know that kind of information, you aren't in a booth at CES that has no AR. This is just some schmuck at CES trying to sound important. One of the things I loved about Macworld Expo was the fact that 75% of the time in the booth, the person you talked to was the owner of the company, the coder of the product, the developer. He was the guy. She was the guy. Girl, gal, female, whatever. Because Macworld Expo was a show about that. It was about small companies wanting to meet customers, wanting to talk to customers. We saw it all the time. We walked in, hey, can we want to talk to the CEO. We want to interview somebody. Here's the CEO. Here's the COO. Here's the vice president of this, that, and the next thing. But at CES, that doesn't happen. The show is too big. If you are a VP, a director, a CEO of a company, you're not working the booth at CES. All right? You're in a hotel room back on the strip making deals. So for that reason alone, this Scoble story is just complete bullshit. Now, is Apple working on augmented reality something? Yes, of course they are. What form that's going to take? Nobody knows. I don't think it's going to be glasses. I don't think Apple, even leaving aside the debacle that was Google Glass, I don't think Apple thinks that consumers want to put that sort of device on their face. I think we as consumers have gotten used to having this stuff on our phones. And there's augmented reality apps on the phone now. As I said before, there's one I used to use quite often called Layers, Layars. I don't even know if it's still available. I think the way we'll have Apple's augmented reality is by seeing that reality augmented through the phone, not through glasses that sit on your face. I think it's going to be, hey, I want to experience augmented reality now. I will hold my phone up and augmented reality will be on the phone. I don't see it being glasses. Obviously, I could be wrong. I just don't see Apple doing it in a Google Glass style way. Monty says big trade show vendors hire booth babes and booth dudes quite frequently. Many of them can only answer basic questions like call center workers. Yeah, that's absolutely true. In the big shows, that's definitely true. And one of the ways I always tested that was if I was talking to somebody, I'd ask them for a business card. The employees of the company that actually do things have business cards. A booth babe or a booth dude will not have business cards. That was my easy test. Mosquito says, I had to work a booth at a publishing trade show in a previous decade. Pretty much all the tiny staff was required to do so. Well, without all the tiny staff? I think he means the entire staff. Without briefing on what we were supposed to say, no briefing. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Not briefing your staff is small staff. Okay, thanks, Mo. But yeah, I don't think it's going to work that way. I don't think that Apple is going to do augmented reality in a glass situation. It doesn't feel like something the company would do. In our starting point photography segment, I got someone asked me about this earlier in the year, and I realized I haven't mentioned it to you guys in a while, so I wanted to make sure that I did. In the past, I've done these live, on-demand beginning photo classes, and the way it works is we get into a Google Hangout, and very much like I'm doing now, I do the class for you. So it's live. So you're watching me do. It's not a YouTube video where you're watching me do this on tape. It's a live video, but it's also on demand, on your demand, not mine. So you can set it up for any time that you'd like. I did one class last year for a woman in Perth, Australia, at 3 a.m. my time. It was like 3 p.m. her time, but I did it according to her schedule. So there's two classes. There's the one is how to take better pictures no matter what camera you have. You'll learn things like the single most important element to a good photograph. You'll learn how to take advantages of the camera that you have. What are the good and bad points of the camera you have in your hand? Takes 2.5 hours, thereabouts, depends on how many people are in the class. It's generally going to be a one-on-one type class. I'll try to arrange it so more people can join in at a particular time, but you choose the time that you want to do it in. It could be noon on a Friday or 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, whatever day that you want to do it on. You can do the class in your pajamas. I won't take pictures of you. As I say, whether it's the camera or on your phone or a point and shoot or a DSLR, we've got easy to grasp tips, tricks, and techniques. We promise we'll make the next photograph you take better than the last one. The most important thing is, if you've been following the show for any period of time, you know that I try to do this stuff in easy to understand English. I try to use as few technical terms as I can, and the ones I do use, I try to explain them to you in non-techie kind of ways so you can grasp these photographic techniques. Photography is actually really easy if you understand it, like most things. But so many of us have a camera, whether that's an iPhone or a point-and-shoot camera or a DSLR, and we don't know how to use it. When you go to try to find out how to use it, the instructor, whether it be a YouTube video or a manual or a book, is too techie for you. So I promise that these classes will not be techie. So there's one on learn how to take better pictures with no matter what camera you have, and the other is learn how to use your DSLR. It's more specifically focused on the DSLR aspect, that camera you have, that Canon Rebel with the removable lenses. I'll explain what these buttons are on the top, and I'll show you how to take better pictures using that camera. I'll give you a few exercises to do it with. The classes are $75 a piece, or if you want to sign up for both of them, they're $125 for both classes, so it's 5 hours for $125. The best part is, if you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life and have been for a year, it's only $50 for each class. So you get a discount if you've been a subscriber to Your Mac Life for a year. Also, if you want to do it in a group, if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 other people that want to sit in your living room or in your computer room and do the class with me, I'm happy to do that for a group of people. I love doing this kind of stuff, as you all well know. So I'm happy to do that with a group of people too. Just send me an email to Shawn at startingpointphotography.com if you want to know more details and want to sign up. It's simple to sign up send money via PayPal or Eventbrite or any other method that we can work out. So if you're interested in that, send me an email to Shawn at startingpointphotography.com. So we saw this really neat ad. Oh, let me turn the volume up. Stop. This really neat ad from Apple of this young lady obviously going home to her family in Greece and taking pictures of family members. It was a really cute ad. I like the ad. I especially love that the ad was in Greek with English subtitles. I thought that was pretty cool. I noticed this subconsciously when I was watching the video, but it wasn't until a photographer pointed it out, the differences in the ads, in what the ad showed versus what the video showed. And I'll explain that here. The video, even though it was, fairly low quality, showed 2 different pictures. So here's a screenshot of the ad. On the top, you'll see the screenshot from the video, and on the bottom, you see the still image, not from the video, but the still image that Apple took. Notice the difference? Notice the lighting is so much darker on the screen grab from the video. Well, it turns out what Apple probably did, and there's nothing wrong with them doing this, by the way. I'm not accusing Apple of doing anything underhanded or sneaky. One of the issues you'll have with the iPhone is light. We all know that photography is capturing a moment in the life of light. One of the things I teach in the class is how to see light and how to control light. So in this example, you can see that in the top shot, the light seems to be from behind the shepherd, right? It looks like it's I don't know if I can zoom in on this. Yeah, the light seems to be coming from behind and to camera right. You see that? And that puts the right side of his face in a little bit of shadow. It's not a bad thing. But if you look at the image below it, I don't know why I can't do that. Oh, come on. You can see that let me open this up in a new tab and see if I can't. There we go. See how the lighting is from, they filled in the lighting on the man's right side of his face? And that's really easy to do. And as someone in the IRC chat room, Sherry mentioned it, I think MacMan said it, and MacMan says a beauty dish, aka a reflector, is something most pro photographers keep in their bags. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about. Zevius says maybe fill in flash. Probably not Zevius because the light is coming from the side, unless they were using a handheld fill in flash. These things should be in your camera bag. This one comes with a strap. This strap hangs off of my camera strap because I want this thing to be as close to me as possible at all times, even when I'm shooting with the iPhone. And it's this little tiny thing. You have to be careful when you open it up because it's spring loaded. So I got to be careful holding this thing in. So see that? This thing fits into here. You just twist it and it compresses down. One side is matte and white. The other side is shiny. So I've used this several times when I want to get some shade over something I'm shooting. Say you're shooting in the midday sun and you need some shade. This is a very light handheld thing. But what Apple is probably doing here is someone off camera, or even in theory, the photographer, is holding this off to the side out of camera view and using it to direct light on the opposite side of the subject's face. So if the sun's coming from their right, you can use it. So the sun's coming up here. You can bounce sunlight off of that reflector, and you can see it bouncing the studio lights. You can see it bouncing the studio lights around. You can bounce the light off that reflector and use it to fill in light on the other side of the person's face. This really works well because if you look at the picture again, and I'll show you the picture, notice how flat the first image is. I think I've dropped this into. Notice how flat the first image is compared to the second one. The second one, because the light has more of a 3D kind of look and feel to it. It's kind of a neat little thing. And again, it's something you can easily. ArcSign says, hey, I can use my car's sunshade. Exactly. Anything you like. As MacMan says, looks like they use the gold side. You can get these things with, not Jim. You can get these things with different colored sides on them. You can get matte, you can get black, you can get gold shiny. There's all kinds of different ones. And they're cheap. They're under $20 at your local camera store here in Canada. You can go to London Drugs and get them. They're really handy. They're very light. It's an easy thing to do to take a picture of someone's face and yet be able to do this off to the side. So you can use your iPhone and still use this off to the side, or you can have someone else hold the reflector. You just have your friend, your significant other, a child, whatever it is, and they can direct the light to the side of the face. Get one of these things and play around with them. They really can help bring out some really interesting highlights in people's faces. I'll send that link to the IRC chat room and to the Slack room for those folks who want to read the link and see some more of the images that they were talking about. It's the problem, and as Xavier said, maybe a fill-in flash. The problem with the fill flash is generally going to be, if the camera is here, let me turn mine on. If the camera is here, the flash is going to be coming straight at the subject. You want the light to come from the side. The fill flashlight should come from unless the sun's directly behind the person. You want the fill light to come from the opposite side of the sun or whatever else it might be. So hopefully those two things can help you be a better photographer. Classes, by the way, I just saw someone's private message me in IRC. Like I said, the classes are anytime you want to do them, except for Wednesdays from 4 to 8. You can do them any day of the week. You can do them Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Doesn't matter. I'm completely open to doing the classes whenever someone wants to do them. So send me an email, Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com. The other thing is, even if you don't want to take the class, if you know of someone who does, please pass on the URL to them. Please let them know about it, because you can let them know about the class. They can send me emails, ask questions. Hopefully it's something that you think is of value to yourself or friends and family. Got some emails here from folks. Let me just find my email folder. A great email from our friend Wayne, who is in the IRC chat room. Thanks, Wayne. Great question. He says, low light camera questions. Hey, Shawn, I've been following your show live in the IRC chat room for some time. I've heard you reiterate numerous times that photography is about capturing light, which in turn means a bigger lens, presumably wider, and a bigger sensor for taking photos in low light conditions. Yeah, when I talk about wider, I mean the physical opening. The wider this physical opening is, obviously, the more light can get into the camera. The bigger the sensor that's in the camera, the more light that sensor can capture, and the more accurately it can recreate the scene in front of you. He says, when shopping for a camera, what is the correct terminology to be looking for or asking for in regards to these features? And what are the ranges for each that a consumer is likely to encounter while shopping? What a great question, Wayne. The first thing is easy because it's pretty consistent across all devices. We've said before that the sensor on your camera is the thing, it's the brains of your camera. It's the thing that light hits, and the sensor takes that light and translates it into ones and zeros and shows it to you. That's the basic thing. So it is only common sense that the bigger that everything else being equal, the bigger that sensor is, the better. All cameras have a sensor. The sensor has replaced film. If you think of it that way, that film used to be behind the lens. Now a sensor is behind the lens. That sensor doesn't move like film does. That sensor has a bunch of different properties that film doesn't, but that's basically what the sensor is. It's the film of your camera. Sensors come in sizes. This is a not to scale representation of the sizes of the iPhone, Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and full frame. And what that means is that 17.3 millimeters squared of the iPhone, that's about the size of your pinky fingernail, maybe half of it, depending on how big your pinky is. So it's very, very small. The next one is the Micro Four Thirds camera, and those are the cameras like the Olympus M1 and M10 and M5, some Fuji cameras, some Panasonic cameras. Those are called Micro Four Thirds, and they're probably 10 times almost bigger than the iPhone. Next up are what are called APS-C sensors. And those are the sensors you're going to find in most consumer-level DSLRs. They're called more often crop frame sensors. You'll see that in some people's descriptions of them. And they say crop frame because the next level up is what's called a full frame. And that full frame is what's in prosumer and professional level cameras. It's called full frame because it's the size of a full frame of film. If you remember back in the days of slide projectors, that slide was, about an inch and a half, 2 inches a side? And then there was that piece of film in there. Well, that piece of film is about the same size as the sensor on a full frame camera. That make sense? So if you think about that and look at this graphic again, you'll see that a full frame sensor is more than twice as big as the crop frame sensor that you'll see on the Canon Rebel and the Nikon D3300 and a bunch of other consumer level cameras. And then that is 50% bigger than the sensor you'll see on a Micro Four Thirds camera. And a full frame camera is orders of magnitude larger than on the iPhone. Now, let's assume, it's not true, but let's assume that all of these sensors are, for lack of a better description, what's the iPhone? The iPhone's 16 megabytes? 16 megapixels? Let's assume it's all 16 megabytes. I know someone will correct me in the IRC chat room any second now. 12. Let's assume they're all 12 megapixels. You can see by the size of the iPhone sensor, you're jamming 12 megapixels into a very small space, as opposed to 12 megapixels in the large space of the full frame. So it means the megapixels themselves are physically bigger than they would be on the iPhone. The megapixel is the part that captures and interprets light. So more megapixels, bigger megapixels is a good thing. Now, Wayne was asking me about where can you find these numbers? Are they written on the box? No, they're not, because they don't really have to be. Because if you're buying a APS-C camera, that's a crop frame camera. They're all going to be about the same size. If you're buying a full frame camera, they're all going to be about the same size. Micro Four Thirds, iPhone. So the manufacturers don't really need to put those numbers on there, as long as you know what kind of camera you're getting. Full frame, crop frame, Micro Four Thirds, or cell phone. If you still want to know, though, there is a great website that I use almost on a daily basis called DP Review. DP Review has got probably the most exhaustive website when it comes to the technical details of cameras. I love these guys' things. If someone asks me a question about a camera and what it can do technical wise, how big its sensors are, what megapixels, how much it weighs, DP Review is my go-to site for any of this kind of stuff. You can do a very simple search on DP Review. You can read their reviews of cameras. Every time someone asks me about a camera, I go to DP Review's camera review section and see what they say about it, because I trust these guys. They do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of cameras all the time. They've got a buying guide, sample images. You want to take a look at cameras I'm familiar with, the Nikon line. Here's the Nikons from 2016. And you can click on these and get all kinds of really wonderful detail about the camera. So here's the D5600, and you can see that there's the sensor size. It says sensor size APS-C. Sensor type, ISO, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So, Wayne, that's the first thing. And you don't have to worry about it, because like I said, you know you're buying a full-frame camera. You know you're buying a crop-frame camera. The other thing you want to ask about is megapixels, but only to a certain degree. Nowadays, as I say in my class, every camera you buy has got plenty of megapixels for the average user. If you're not the average user, if you're someone who wants to or thinks you're going to print your stuff off on a wall, then you need more megapixels. But for the average person, most of us are just putting stuff, we're maybe printing off 8.5 by 11s. Most of the time we're putting them up on Facebook or on Twitter or on Flickr or that kind of stuff. Any camera with any amount of megapixels above 12, you're going to be fine. The more the better, but you don't need to go overboard on them. The other aspect you were talking about is lenses and ranges. That to me I thought was a little more complicated. The biggest thing when it comes to lenses is what can you afford? And will the lens shoot the kind of images that you want it to? Okay? And what I mean by that is there's no point in buying a gigantic 300 millimeter zoom lens if you're never going to shoot things that are far away. There's no point in buying a beautiful 11 millimeter wide angle lens if you shoot portraits of people. So know what kind of photography you like doing and then buy the lens that suits that. When it comes to lenses, generally, the more expensive, the better. Generally. The big number to look for on lenses is, I don't even have one. Do I have a lens? No, someone made me put all my stuff away. The thing I want to look for on lenses, I don't know if I can show this on screen, is this right here. Right there. That says 24-120. That number dictates the zoom of the lens, and also it says f3.5 f3.5 to 5.6, I think. That's the aperture. You want the lowest number you can afford. I know that sounds funny, but you can get lenses that are f1.8 and to be hugely expensive. So you can get an 85 millimeter lens that's f1.8, and then you'll see another 85 millimeter lens that's f3.5, and the 1.8 lens is twice as expensive. And that's because of that 1.8 number. It means that its aperture opens up almost twice as wide as the other one, so you can get twice as much light in there. So those are the numbers you want to look for when it comes to lenses, is the zoom range, if it has one, and the aperture range. Lower is better on aperture. As MacMan says, just mortgage a kidney and get the 2470 and 7200 f2.8. That's what I'm talking about. You can get a approximately, well, this lens here, this is my 24-120, and I like this lens. It's a good lens. It's not the greatest lens, but I could afford it. The lens I want, the 2470 f2.8, is $2,000. This one was under $1,000. Even though they cover approximately the same kind of range, because of that F number, because of that opening, the build quality, the general quality of the 2470 is significantly better than on this 24-120. Wayne says, what are the units of aperture? They generally they go from say 1.8 up to you'll see f 1.8 to f 22, and there'll be numbers in between f 1.4, 1.8, 2, 2.3. There's a whole bunch of fractions, decimal numbers in there. Those units, as Monty says, those units are called f-stops. So what you're looking for is a camera with the lowest number of f-stop that you can afford. You'll find some big zoom lenses that just, those big, huge things, can't do low f-stop numbers because they're too big. So if you're looking for the average lens for you, depending on your level of photography, an f3.5 aperture lens, that's good enough for the most part. If you're just shooting average everyday shots, you just want to have fun with photography, you want to learn about photography, that's the lens. If you're a beginner, that's a decent lens for you, depending on which camera you get. Hopefully that answers your question, Wayne. If you have any more, if I didn't explain something properly, please let me know. Someone else had a question about... there we go. Our friend Ron Klutz, who is the official pilot of Your Mac Life. No, this isn't the right one. No, Ron, you had another question. Or someone had another question that I missed. Damn it. Hang on. Yes, there it is. There's a question. Ron says, I had to disagree with something you say about the iPhone and its light gathering ability. You may be simplifying it for the audience, but your conclusion is right, just not the reason why. You say the iPhone lens doesn't capture enough light because it's so small. BS. If it didn't capture a lot of light, then why is it an f2.0 lens? The f-stop is simply a ratio of lens opening size to the focal length. So f2.0 on an iPhone lets in the same amount of light as an f2 lens in a Canon 50mm lens. I do agree that the kinds of shots you can get and the quality will be different, so the difference must lie in the quality of the glass and the lens and the camera sensor. Also, shutter lag and lack of control shutter speed and f-stop result in pictures you describe. On a DSLR, I can shoot at f32 on a bright day and get great shots. So it's the quality of the lens and sensor that makes it possible, not the f-stop of the iPhone. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. I'm not going to agree or disagree. I'm just going to let it go. I got to show this one. I got this picture from TGD. Hang on, save the downloads. This is from Shawn Kruger. I love getting these pictures. Hang on, Shawn. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Downloads. TGD. This one? Yes, here it is. I love getting these pictures, especially of kids at Christmas. Shawn sent me this graphic of his gorgeous little girls. I don't think he sent me the name. Did he? Yes, he did. Let me just see. Who is this family? Shawn. Jesus, sorry. The font you use there is too hard to read, Shawn. Shawn, Shawnee, Natalie, and Annalise. Those are some beautiful daughters you got there, Shawn. Congratulations. And my sympathies, too, dude, because when they get old enough, you're not going to have any fun at all. Some random comments on your last show. Strive, S-T-R-I-I-V. How is that pronounced? I'd assume that it's pronounced like the word strive, as in strive for your fitness goals. When you say striv, it sounds really odd to me. But this is a pet peeve of mine when companies name themselves or a product of misspelling a real word. If you hear them say it, you have no idea how it should be pronounced. 4K TVs, I think they're catching on faster than you realize. Last summer, our 14-year-old Sony went dead. Probably needs a new bulb, but who wants to sink $100 into a 14-year-old TV? Started doing some looking online. There was a good selection of 4K TVs and decent prices. I was able to go from a 50-inch 720p to a 60-inch 4K TV that was so much better in every measure for 1/4 what I paid for the last one. Yeah, I'm not saying that 4K TVs aren't coming. They're absolutely definitely coming. There's no doubt about that. But it just wasn't going to happen this year at this CES. I think 4K TVs will be very, very big this coming Christmas. 4K TVs are not 3D TVs. 3D TV was just a gimmick that was never, in my opinion, going to go anywhere. But I do believe that 4K TVs will definitely be the future. Wi-Fi stuff. Has Apple actually said they're getting out of the market, or is this just speculation? Until the airport is dead, I'm holding out hope. I think it would be great to see an updated version with mesh networking. The problem is mesh networking, Shawn, is very specific. Not everyone. It's unlike an airport base station. Not everyone needs a mesh network. So I can't see how Apple would want to sell a product that really isn't of use to every single customer. It can be used. You certainly, if I give you mesh routers, you can still use them in your house, but you don't need them. It is rumored that Apple's getting out of the Wi-Fi area. Now, maybe it's just because they've stopped developing that and they're going to announce something new in 6 months. I don't know. But that's the rumor. The question is, does Apple need to be in the router business from Apple's point of view? Yes, we like them because they're easy to use, easy to set up. But from Apple's perspective, do they need to be in the router business? That's the question that obviously isn't going to be answered until Apple does or doesn't bring out a new product. Finally, a comment on camera quality. My aging Canon 40D has some kind of issue going on with a weird error message that won't let me take pictures. I only do 1 or 2 pro gigs a year now, so I have no urgent need to repair or replace it. For the last few years, I've been renting a 6D for my big annual gig in the fall anyway. At this point, I'm going to try and hold out for the 6D Mark II, rumored to come out this year. But that leaves the little family stuff. This year, I shot my Christmas card photos on my iPhone 7. I used a clamp with soft pads to hold it to a tripod. I used my watch as a remote shutter for the shots I was in. Some of the indoor stuff, the color was off. I probably could have done better with an app that shot raw so I could tweak the white balance further, but for what it was, it worked. Of course, a DSLR will be better than a phone camera if they are similar vintage. This is an interesting point that Shawn makes. But I believe that the iPhone has surpassed early DSLRs in most regards. Advances in sensor tech will allow for better low light and fast action photography. But those advances will happen on both ends of the spectrum. So, the DSLR of 5 years from now will be better than the iPhone of 5 years from now. But the iPhone of 5 years from now just might be on par with the DSLRs of today for well-lit situations and the DSLRs of 5 years ago for low-light stuff. For the kind of event and theater photography I do, the DSLR is still king. But I've been tempted to take the big group cast photo, still in well-lit people, with the iPhone's panorama mode. It would be way more resolution than all but the highest end DSLRs. Keep up the good work. Hope your photography trips work out. Sounds like a lot of fun. Out of my budget for now. Happy New Year, Shawn A. Kruger. Thank you, Shawn, for that email. I appreciate that. Appreciate you sending me that. And the lovely picture of your family. The puppy and the kids and the wife. Thanks. I appreciate that. Folks, that's it for the show this evening. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining me here each and every week as he is court mandated to do so. And thanks to you guys for sending me, for being tuned in the show. Don't forget, if you want more information about the photography class, send me an email to Shawn at startingpointphotography.com or the usual email, Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. I'd love to help you learn to take better pictures in 2017. As always, until next week, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!